Today's episode of Voiced is from r/pro revenge and is about a homeowner's strategic takedown of an overreaching HOA president and a man's comical yet disastrous alter ego that unexpectedly haunts his adult life. What happens when mischief turns into mayhem? Subscribe if you enjoy.
When I moved into my suburban neighborhood, I expected peace and quiet. Instead, I walked into a petty dictatorship run by our homeowners association president, Todd. Todd was the worst kind of leader, the kind who loved power but hated accountability. He enforced ridiculous rules like fining people $200 for leaving their trash cans out a minute past 9 o'clock in the morning, but blatantly ignored the rules when it suited him. His own yard was a mess of unpermitted structures, and his fence was taller than allowed by city ordinances. But Todd's true sin? Using the homeowners association as his personal piggy bank. At first, I tried reasoning with him. My fence was slightly off color because the approved stain wasn't available, and he fined me $500. I explained, provided receipts, and asked for leniency. Todd smirked, said, "Rules are rules," and walked away. That's when I decided I would take him down, not with screaming or public arguments, but methodically, legally, and in a way he'd never recover from. Step 1. Become the inside man. Todd's first mistake was underestimating me. I volunteered for the Homeowners Association board under the guise of wanting to get involved in the community. I played the part of the eager, naive newbie perfectly. For 2 years, I attended every meeting, quietly observing how Todd operated. I learned he controlled the board by bullying other members and burying them in paperwork. He'd push through votes when only his allies were present and conveniently lose paperwork submitted by dissenting homeowners. I kept my head down, took detailed notes, and waited. My goal was to outlast his term as president so I could begin making changes. Then I discovered Todd's second mistake. He wasn't just a bully, he was a thief. Step 2. Follow the money. Todd loved to brag about how he kept the Homeowners Association's finances in order. But something didn't add up. The annual Homeowners Association fees were much higher than in similar neighborhoods, but the common areas were falling apart. The pool was closed half the summer due to maintenance issues, and the landscaping looked like it hadn't been touched in months. I started digging. As the Homeowners Association treasurer, Todd had access to all the accounts, but he was notoriously cagey about sharing financial details. I asked for the budget during a meeting, and Todd laughed it off, saying, "Don't worry, I've got it under control." I filed a formal request for the financial records, which, under Homeowners Association rules, he was required to provide. Weeks went by with no response. That's when I started talking to neighbors. Turns out, I wasn't the only one suspicious. Over a dozen homeowners had requested access to the budget over the years, only to be ignored. One neighbor claimed Todd had used Homeowners Association funds to install a new patio at his house, while another swore he'd seen Todd's kids at the community pool during its maintenance closure. Armed with these suspicions, I filed a formal complaint with the Homeowners Association board, forcing Todd to provide the records. He stalled, but I wasn't backing down. Step 3. Build the case. When Todd finally handed over the financial documents, they were a mess. Invoices were missing, payments were mislabeled, and some expenses were downright bizarre. A $15,000 landscaping fee paid to a company that didn't exist. Thousands spent on administrative costs with no explanation. I cross-referenced the Homeowners Association's bank statements with public records and found the smoking gun. Todd was funneling money to his personal accounts. Even better, I discovered Todd had been inflating contractor fees, pocketing the difference, and splitting the profits with his buddy, a shady contractor who handled most of the Homeowners Association's maintenance. I compiled everything into a detailed report, complete with spreadsheets, photos, and notarized statements from neighbors who had seen Todd's antics firsthand. Step 4. I waited for the annual Homeowners Association meeting, which was typically a snooze fest attended by only a handful of homeowners. But this time, I made sure people showed up. I spent weeks knocking on doors, explaining what Todd had been up to. I didn't share everything, just enough to get people angry and curious. On the night of the meeting, the room was packed. Todd started the meeting like usual, droning on about how difficult it was to manage the Homeowners Association and how much he'd sacrificed for the community. That's when I stood up. I calmly asked if he could explain some discrepancies in the budget. Todd laughed nervously and said, "I don't think this is the time or place." I replied, "Actually, Todd, it's the perfect time." I handed out copies of my report to everyone in the room. The mood shifted instantly. People started reading, whispering, and then shouting. Todd tried to regain control, but it was too late. I called for a vote to remove him as president. By the end of the night, Todd was out. Step 5. The final blow. After Todd was removed, we hired an independent auditor to go through the Homeowners Association's finances. They confirmed everything. Todd had embezzled over $50,000, mismanaged tens of thousands more, and committed multiple counts of fraud. We reported him to the police and filed a civil lawsuit to recover the stolen funds. But it didn't end there. Todd's shady contractor buddy was also exposed and banned from doing business in the county. Todd had to sell his house to pay restitution and legal fees. His name became a running joke in the neighborhood, and no one would hire him professionally. With Todd gone, we restructured the Homeowners Association to prevent another dictator from taking over. We implemented term limits, required multiple board members to approve financial decisions, and created an online portal so all homeowners could access budgets and meeting minutes. The aftermath. Every time I walk past Todd's old house, now owned by a lovely family, I smile. The pool is open, the landscaping is beautiful, and the Homeowners Association fees are lower than ever. Todd, meanwhile, moved to a neighboring town, where he reportedly tried to join another Homeowners Association board, only to be laughed out of the room when someone Googled his name. Justice wasn't just served, it was plated, garnished, and savored.
Wow. Talk about a twist of fate. From a petty HOA dictator learning a hard lesson about accountability to the unexpected consequences of a lighthearted prank that spiraled out of control, life sure has its way of throwing surprises our way. As the homeowner from the first story basked in their sweet victory, we now shift gears to an entirely different challenge. Enter a hilarious yet bizarre tale of a redneck alter ego who has taken on a life of its own, leaving a trail of chaos not just in laughter, but in credit reports too. Hold on to your hats, because this wild ride is about to get even wilder. So technically was not today, but today was the day I realized how extensive the issue is. To back up about 10 years, I created this fake persona as a joke to mess with my boss at the time, who had a good sense of humor, but was insanely gullible. He was frantically trying to hire for a sales position and wasn't getting any applicants, and said I'd hire about anyone right now. So I said, okay. I created this ridiculously outlandish but believable resume with a bunch of funny titles and job responsibilities for this southern redneck named Ricky, who was the assistant to the vice president of local janitorial operations at Chuck E. Cheese, a semi-retired rock star who liked to play at the bars, and an ex-pit stop mechanic for Dale back in the day. I created a whole crazy backstory on a cover letter and applied for the job, but made it sound almost believable. I even went as far as to trim my beard down to a Hulk Hogan mustache, and I have this mullet wig I used for a Joe Dirt costume in middle school, and sent him an email a few days after applying with a really cringe, candid headshot my girlfriend at the time took and sent it to him. In the emails, I told him I was going to roll up to the office soon on the spot for an interview because he would have been stupid not to hire me. He had no idea it was me, so I started messing with him even more and calling his office phone, doing my deep southern accent. Not hard because I grew up in the South and have an accent in me, so I basically dropped my voice an octave and do a Blake Shelton impression, and telling him I was ready to work, and he was mildly concerned this weirdo was going to show up one day. I told absolutely nobody I was doing this and was dying, hearing him talk to colleagues about this weird dude who keeps calling him. Then, on a Friday before a holiday, I came into the office with a wig, mustache, jean jacket, my boots, and an Ozzy Osbourne shirt I found at Goodwill and kept in character for most of the day. The rest of the company found out about this and thought it was the funniest thing ever, as did my friends and family, so it became kind of a bit and evolved into this redneck alter ego thing. We had this office that was repurposed as a storage room nobody went into, and they put a nameplate on the door for Ricky. And from what I understand, that was Ricky's office for several years, even after I left. From there, I created a Facebook page, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, etc., over a period of several years. I'd just post ridiculous things here and there, like crazy redneck stories he had in horrendous grammar, random YouTube videos, and just random stuff. It's become like a lore at this point, and I've just kept it going because I've had fun with it. My friends will contact me and say, "What's old Slick Rick been getting into these days?" And I got really proficient at Photoshop, so I'd put him into pictures and create a funny backstory as to how he got there. He will absolutely be in attendance front row at the inauguration in a few days somehow. And I've put out a couple of songs in his voice where I played the guitar intentionally poorly and did a diss track a few months ago. I literally learned how to play guitar decently so I could intentionally do it slightly off tune. It has been really a good way for me to connect with a lot of my friends in different places I don't see often anymore, and makes me happy. I know it makes them smile. It got to a point where it started to overlap, and I let the hillbilly hell-raising energy carry over into my daily life a bit, and can flip the accent on and off. I work as a sales director in a leadership position at a software company. Now that's pretty high stress sometimes, so it's almost like an outlet where I can tune down my IQ a lot and just do silly things and not take life so seriously. Nothing wrong with bringing a little laughter into people's lives, and I still think it's hilarious making stuff up for it. His slogan is mopping floors, drinking Coors. I bought a C8 Corvette a few years ago and really played into the trailer park Ferrari jokes. Haha. But it makes me really happy. This silly bit brings laughter to the lives of people I care about a decade later, and I literally cackle when I create silly scenarios and posts for him. I'll go look through them sometimes and I'm like, how in the world did I even come up with that? Anyways, I started using his namesake for random things, burner emails, things I don't want to sign up for using my name, referrals for services, etc. Basically, I signed him up for everything I didn't want to, or as an extra account legally that doesn't require a social security number. Ol' Ricky has a whole lot of Starbucks rewards, that's for sure. Lol. This was all fun and games until today. My wife and I are currently trying to sell our current home, and we put in an offer that was accepted this morning. When working with the lender today, I have a credit monitoring program, and I called and asked a few verification questions since I have my credit, and one of them came up and asked for known associates. And Ricky, last name, came up, and I was like, what? After looking at my credit report, when my wife and I got married 2 years ago, we ended up renting out her home to this really kind older gentleman who still lives there. However, on not only my credit report but my wife's, it shows Ricky as the tenant and a known associate on background checks and searches. It also shows him as a co-tenant at a corporate apartment I rented 5 years ago at every credit agency. He apparently even shows up in his own background checks, minus a social security number. I'm assuming this is due to data mining issues. But this is specifically problematic because when I brought this up to our lender and said, that's a problem, as we intend to keep the rental, somehow our actual tenant doesn't even show up for them and they just see Ricky, which was very difficult to articulate. Ricky is someone who doesn't exist, but we have an actual renter who does exist but doesn't show up as a tenant other than the lease documents we have. I created an alter ego as a joke 10 years ago and made it a running bit, using his name for extra rewards accounts and other things. Now, he appears as a tenant on my wife and my credit reports, which could potentially prevent us from buying our dream home. Before I dive into today's posts, please consider subscribing for more outrageous stories like these. Wow, what a wild ride these two posts were. From the intense saga of Todd the HOA president, who turned out to be a petty dictator and embezzler, to the hilarious and absurd consequences of an alter ego named Ricky that spiraled completely out of control, it's clear that life can serve up some unexpected twists. I'm still chuckling at the thought of Ricky crashing a credit report. What do you think? Should Todd face even more consequences for his actions, or is it time to let bygones be bygones? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Voiced. If you enjoy daily high-quality stories, please like and subscribe to show your support.